15 nannies in 8 months. That was the number Ji-hoon kept in a locked drawer of his mind, along with every other failure he couldn't afford to acknowledge. 15 women who had walked through the steel-reinforced doors of his penthouse, looked into the eyes of his dying nephew, and decided their survival mattered more than a child's. He couldn't blame them, not really. The boy was 6 years old and weighed 32 pounds. Hyun-woo's genetic disorder had no cure, only management, and management required someone who wouldn't flinch when the alarm screamed at 3 a.m., when the seizures came, when the breathing stopped and had to be manually restarted. Management required someone who could look at a child drowning in his own body and not see a lost cause. 15 women had seen exactly that. Ji-hoon stood in his private office on the 42nd floor, watching Seoul's night skyline through bulletproof glass, and felt the particular emptiness of a man who could buy anything except the one thing that mattered. His empire stretched across 3 countries. His name made politicians nervous and rivals disappear. But he couldn't keep one small boy alive. Hyun-woo was his sister's son, had been his sister's son, before the car bomb meant for Ji-hoon had found her instead, before his brother-in-law had drunk himself into a grave within 6 months. Now the boy was Ji-hoon's responsibility, his penance, his last piece of family in a world he'd burned everything else to control. The intercom crackled. "Sir, the new candidate is here." 16. Ji-hoon didn't turn from the window. "Send her to the surveillance room. I'll observe first." He'd learned that lesson. The last 3 nannies had performed beautifully in interviews. Warm smiles, impressive credentials, appropriate concern. Then they'd seen the medical equipment that turned Hyun-woo's bedroom into a pediatric ICU, heard the child cry in pain that medication could only dull, not stop, and they'd lasted less than a week. Better to watch them when they thought no one was looking. People revealed themselves in the spaces between performance. The surveillance room was small, windowless, lined with screens that covered every angle of the penthouse except Ji-hoon's private quarters. He'd installed the system after the 3rd nanny had been caught stealing medication. Now he watched everything. The nurses who came during the day, the physical therapist who appeared twice weekly, the rotating cast of failures who couldn't handle what his money had built. A prison of luxury, a fortress of loneliness, a place where a child suffered in comfort while Ji-hoon watched from behind glass. The woman who appeared on screen 7 wasn't what he expected. First, she was black. The agency hadn't mentioned that, though Ji-hoon wouldn't have cared. His world was built on efficiency and loyalty, not prejudice. He had Ukrainian enforcers, Chinese accountants, and a Japanese consigliere. Competence had no nationality.
Second, she was early, 30 minutes early, which meant she'd either misjudged Seoul's traffic or wanted time to observe before being observed. Third, she wasn't nervous. She stood in the penthouse's main living area, a space of cold marble and colder design, and simply looked, not at the artwork that cost more than most homes, not at the view that stretched across the Han River. She looked at the medical supply cart near the hallway, the specialized cushions on the sofa, the texture of the carpet, soft, thick, chosen because a child who fell often needed something gentle to land on. She was reading the room like he read people, looking for what mattered. Ji-hoon leaned forward slightly, watching screen 7 with the focus he usually reserved for interrogations. The woman wore simple clothes, dark jeans, a cream sweater, comfortable shoes. Her hair was pulled back in a practical bun. No jewelry except small earrings. No makeup he could detect. She carried a single bag, worn but clean, and when she set it down, she did so carefully, quietly, like someone used to not disturbing others. She walked to the window, looked out at Seoul's lights, and Ji-hoon saw her shoulders drop slightly. A small exhale. Relief or resignation, he couldn't tell which. Then she turned and walked directly toward Hyun-woo's room. Ji-hoon's hand moved to the intercom button. The agency coordinator should have stopped her, explained the protocol, waited for his arrival. But the woman moved with purpose, not confusion, and something made him wait. She stopped at Hyun-woo's door. The medical equipment hummed audibly even through the surveillance audio. The oxygen concentrator, the feeding pump, the monitors that tracked every breath and heartbeat. Ji-hoon had long since hearing them, but visitors always paused at that sound, the mechanical proof that the boy inside couldn't survive without machines. Ji-hoon's knocked, gently, 3 soft taps. Ji-hoon's jaw tightened. Hyun-woo was sleeping if he was lucky. The child slept so little, suffered so constantly, that waking him for an introduction seemed cruel even by Ji-hoon's standards. But she wasn't waiting for permission. She opened the door slowly, quietly, and stepped inside. Screen 4 showed Hyun-woo's room. The boy was awake. He was always awake, propped on pillows that kept his airways open, his thin chest rising and falling with effort. The night nurse had stepped out, a violation Ji-hoon would address later. The woman approached the bed. Hyun-woo watched her with the wary exhaustion of a child who'd learned that new faces usually meant new pain. She sat down on the chair beside his bed, not too close, not hovering. She sat like someone settling in for a conversation, then pulled something from her pocket. A small toy, a wooden giraffe, hand-carved, worn smooth by handling.
"Hey," she said softly, her voice clear through the audio. "My name's Sophia. I had a giraffe like this when I was small. His name was Jabani. That means brave, where my grandmother's from." She set the giraffe on the edge of Hyun-woo's bed, within reach but not forced into his hands. "I heard you're pretty brave, too." Hyun-woo didn't speak. He rarely did anymore. But his eyes tracked the giraffe, and Ji-hoon saw the boy's thin fingers twitch slightly. "You don't have to talk to me," Sophia continued. "I just wanted to say hi before the grown-ups do all their boring talking. I wanted you to know I see you first, not the machines. You." She stood, returned the chair to its exact position, and walked toward the door. Then she stopped, turned back, and began to sing. It wasn't Korean, it wasn't English. The words were soft, rhythmic, a lullaby in a language Ji-hoon didn't recognize. African, probably, though his knowledge of the continent was limited to business contacts and shipping routes. Her voice was untrained but steady, warm without being sweet, and she sang while looking directly at Hyun-woo. The boy's breathing slowed. His shoulders, perpetually tense against pain, eased slightly into the pillows. When Sophia finished, she smiled at him, small, genuine, sad around the edges, and left the room as quietly as she'd entered. Ji-hoon sat in the surveillance room, surrounded by screens and silence, and felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Curiosity, and beneath it, dangerous and unwelcome, hope. Ji-hoon made her wait. It was petty, perhaps, but he needed time to process what he'd seen, needed to review the footage again, look for calculation behind the kindness, search for the performance he knew had to be there. No one approached a dying child with that much gentleness without wanting something. He pulled her file while she sat in the living room. Sophia Johnson, 28, Nigerian father and Korean-American mother. Born in Lagos, raised in Atlanta, nursing degree from Emory. Pediatric ICU experience. References that praised her clinical skills and her emotional intelligence with terminal patients. Terminal patients. The words sat heavy on the screen. None of the other candidates' files had used that phrase. They'd focused on childcare, on development, on therapeutic activities. They'd pretended Hyun-woo had a future. This woman's references acknowledged what Ji-hoon barely admitted to himself. They weren't hiring someone to help Hyun-woo live. They were hiring someone to help him die with dignity. The thought made Ji-hoon's chest constrict. He closed the file. When he finally entered the living room, Sophia stood, not jumping to her feet, not nervous, just rising out of respect. She met his eyes directly, another surprise. Most people looked away from Ji-hoon's gaze, even people who didn't know who he was. He carried violence in his posture,
the kind of controlled danger that made civilians uncomfortable on an instinctive level.
She looked at him like she was used to dangerous men, like she'd decided he wasn't the most frightening thing in her world. "Mr. Park," she said, and her voice was the same as it had been with Hyun-woo, calm, direct, unperformed. "Miss Johnson," Ji-hoon gestured to the sofa, "please." They sat across from each other, a coffee table between them, made of glass thick enough to stop bullets. Ji-hoon had learned to conduct all his business behind barriers. "You went into my nephew's room without permission," he said. "I did." "Why?" "Because he's the reason I'm here." Sophia's hands rested loosely in her lap. No fidgeting, no defensive crossing of arms. "The agency told me about his condition, told me what happened to the other nannies. They were honest about it being difficult." "Difficult," Ji-hoon repeated, and he couldn't keep the bitterness from his voice. "That's diplomatic." "That's bullshit," Sophia corrected, and Ji-hoon's eyebrows rose. "Your nephew is dying, slowly, painfully, and you've been hiring people who can't face that reality, who want to save him, or fix him, or pretend that love and positive thinking will change his genetics." The bluntness was startling. Ji-hoon leaned back slightly, reassessing. "And you can face it?" "I've faced it before." Something flickered across Sophia's expression, old pain, carefully contained. "My brother had sickle cell. He died when I was 16. I spent 2 years watching him suffer, watching my parents exhaust themselves, trying to keep him comfortable, watching nurses and doctors who meant well but couldn't admit they were managing death, not preventing it." She paused, and Ji-hoon saw her gather herself. "I became a nurse because of him, because I learned that dying children need someone who isn't afraid to be present for the worst of it, someone who won't disappear when things get hard." 15 people disappeared, Ji-hoon said quietly. "What makes you different?" "I'm not Korean," Sophia said, and the unexpected answer made Ji-hoon frown. "I'm not embedded in your culture's expectations about family obligation, or honor, or saving face. I'm not going to be paralyzed by the pressure of failing you. I'm here for Hyun-woo, not for you." Ji-hoon felt his jaw tighten. "You're in my home," he said. "You're in Hyun-woo's home," she countered. "You just pay for it." The silence that followed was sharp, dangerous. People didn't speak to Ji-hoon like this. His reputation preceded him. The man who'd consolidated 3 rival organizations before he turned 30, who'd survived assassination attempts that killed everyone around him, who'd built an empire on the bodies of people who'd underestimated his capacity for violence. But Sophia Johnson sat across from him, waiting, and he realized she'd done her research too. She knew exactly who he was and had decided his reputation was irrelevant to Hyun-woo's needs. "The position requires confidentiality," Ji-hoon said, changing tactics. "You'll see things, hear things. People will come to this apartment who aren't typical visitors." "I don't care about your business." "You should. It's dangerous."
Everything's dangerous. Sophia's expression didn't change. "I'm a black woman working without permanent residency in a country that barely tolerates foreigners. I'm already navigating danger every day. Your world isn't special, Mr. Park. It's just more honest about what it is." Ji-hoon studied her for a long moment, looking for the crack, the fear, the angle. He found none of it. "Why do you need this job?" he asked. "Your credentials to get you work anywhere." "My visa's expiring. I need employer sponsorship." Sophia's voice remained level, but Ji-hoon caught the slight tension in her shoulders. "And I need to send money home. My father's medical bills didn't stop when my brother died." There it was, the leverage, the pressure point. "So you're desperate," Ji-hoon said. "I'm motivated," Sophia corrected. "There's a difference. Desperate people make mistakes. I don't." "Everyone makes mistakes. Not with children who can't afford them."
Ji-hoon stood, walked to the window, looked out at the city he'd conquered and controlled and still couldn't protect. Behind him, he heard Sophia remain seated, not following, not pushing. "The previous nanny lasted 4 days," he said to the glass. "She left in the middle of the night, didn't even collect her final payment. She just ran. She saw something she couldn't handle, either medically or personally. But running from a child who's suffering is cruel. I don't run." Ji-hoon turned. "How do I know that?" "You don't." Sophia met his eyes again. "You watched me on your cameras. You read my file. You're probably running a background check right now. But none of that tells you if I'll stay when Hyun-woo has a seizure at 3 a.m. and stops breathing. None of it tells you if I'll be there when he's in so much pain he can't stop screaming. You won't know until it happens. And if you leave, I won't. Why should I believe you?" Sophia stood then, slowly, and Ji-hoon saw the full weight of what she carried: grief, determination, and something harder to name. "Because I already stayed once. I stayed for my brother until the end. I held his hand when he died, and I promised him I'd do it again for someone else's brother, for someone else's son. I keep my promises, Mr. Park." The penthouse felt very quiet. Even the city sounds beyond the windows seemed distant, muffled. Ji-hoon looked at this woman who'd walked into his fortress, broken his protocol, and spoken to him like they were equals. "The pay is substantial," he said finally, "but you'll essentially live here. Private room, private bathroom, but you'll be on call whenever needed. The day nurses handle most of the medical care, but nights are yours, and the difficult moments." "I understand." "There are rules. You don't answer the door. You don't take calls on personal phones in common areas. You don't ask questions about my work."
"Agreed." "And if you leave," Ji-hoon's voice dropped, taking on the edge that made grown men nervous. "If you abandon him like the others did, you'll find your visa problems become significantly worse." It was a threat. Not subtle, not kind, but necessary. He needed her to understand the stakes. Sophia's expression didn't change. "If I leave before Hyun-woo no longer needs me, you can do whatever you want to me. I won't fight it. But I won't leave, Mr. Park, so you're wasting your breath." Ji-hoon almost smiled. Almost. "You start tonight," he said. "I'll have your room prepared." Sophia's room was perfect and sterile, a hotel suite that had never been home to anyone. King bed, private bathroom, closet space for a wardrobe she didn't own. The window faced east, toward the mountains beyond Seoul's sprawl. She stood there for a moment, bag still in hand, and let herself feel the weight of what she'd done. She'd lied. Not about her credentials, not about her brother, but about not being afraid. She was terrified. Park Ji-hoon was exactly what the whispered rumors in the expat nursing community had suggested: cold, powerful, dangerous, the kind of man who made problems disappear. When she'd researched the position, she'd found his name attached to corporate entities and charity foundations, but underneath that legitimate surface, the truth breathed. He ran one of Seoul's most sophisticated criminal organizations: money laundering, protection rackets, weapons trafficking. Nothing violent enough to draw international attention, everything brutal enough to maintain control. And she'd just moved into his home. But Hyun-woo's face kept appearing in her mind, that exhausted wariness, that pain-dulled resignation. She'd seen it before, in her brother's eyes during his final months, the look of a child who'd stopped hoping adults could make things better. She could help with that. She had to help with that, even if it meant living in a gangster's fortress. Sophia unpacked quickly. Practical clothes, medical reference books, the small wooden cross her mother had given her. She set it on the nightstand, whispered a prayer her grandmother had taught her, and left the room. The penthouse at night felt different. The day nurse had left at 8 p.m., departing with a curt nod and instructions to call if anything catastrophic happened. The clinical detachment had made Sophia's skin crawl, but she understood it. Burnout was real. Compassion fatigue killed careers. She wouldn't let it kill her attention to Hyun-woo.
His room was quiet when she entered. The boy was awake, always awake, and turned his head slightly when she approached. "Hey," Sophia said softly, pulling the chair closer to his bed. "Remember me? Sophia. I'm going to be here at night now." Hyunwoo's eyes tracked her movements. He was beautiful despite his illness, with delicate features and dark hair that someone kept carefully trimmed. His uncle's work, probably. She couldn't imagine Park Ji-hoon trusting anyone else with scissors near the child's throat.
I brought you something, Sophia continued, reaching into her pocket. She pulled out a small photo, worn at the edges. This is my brother, David. He was sick like you. Different sick, but still hard. She showed Hyunwoo the photo, a teenage boy with a bright smile and tired eyes, his arm around a younger Sophia's shoulders. He taught me to be brave, even when things hurt. And he taught me that it's okay to be scared. You don't have to pretend for me, okay? Hyunwoo's fingers moved slightly. Sophia understood the gesture. He wanted to see the photo closer. She placed it gently on his pillow where he could look at it. You keep that, she said. David would have liked you. The breathing monitor beeped steadily. The oxygen concentrator hummed. Sophia checked his vitals, adjusted his pillow slightly to ease the pressure on his spine, and settled into the chair. I'm going to stay right here tonight, she said. You sleep if you can. If you hurt, you let me know. Signal me however you can. We'll figure out our communication. Hyunwoo's eyes closed, but Sophia knew he wasn't sleeping, just resting, conserving energy for the pain that would wake him inevitably. She pulled out a small notebook and began documenting respiratory rate, oxygen saturation, pain indicators. The medical mind that had kept her brother comfortable would keep Hyunwoo comfortable too. Hours passed. Sophia didn't notice Ji-hoon watching from the hallway until she stood to stretch, rolling her shoulders. He stood perfectly still in the shadows, and when he stepped into the doorframe, she didn't jump. Can't sleep? She asked quietly. I don't sleep much. Ji-hoon's eyes moved to Hyunwoo, and Sophia caught something unguarded in his expression. Grief, raw and unhealed. You love him, she observed. Ji-hoon's jaw tightened. He's family. That's not what I said. They looked at each other across the dim room, the child between them breathing artificially steady. You told me you wouldn't run, Ji-hoon said. Do you know what that means? What happens here when he gets worse? I know what dying looks like. It's not just the dying, Ji-hoon's voice dropped. It's the guilt, the watching, the knowing you have all this power and money and control and none of it matters. You can't buy him more time. You can't threaten his illness into submission. You just watch him fade. Sophia heard the confession beneath the words. This man who controlled so much was helpless here. Then don't watch alone, she said simply. That's why I'm here. Ji-hoon studied her for a long moment, then nodded once and disappeared back into the shadows. Sophia returned to her chair, to her vigil, and felt the weight of surveillance she couldn't see. He was still watching, she was certain of that. But maybe, she thought, that wasn't the worst thing.
Do you think she just signed her death warrant? Or is she the only reason he hasn't lost everything? Comment below, like this video, and subscribe to see how this unfolds. Hyunwoo seized at 3:47 a.m. Sophia woke instantly, the nurse's instinct that never slept, and was at his bedside before the monitor alarm finished its first wail. His small body convulsed, eyes rolling back, and she moved with practiced precision, cleared his airway, turned him on his side, started timing. 90 seconds, eternal and brief. When it stopped, Hyunwoo's breathing was ragged, terrified. He couldn't speak, but his eyes found hers, searching for something, reassurance, understanding, proof that she hadn't run. I'm here, Sophia said, her hand gentle on his shoulder. You're okay. It's over. I'm right here. She heard footsteps in the hallway, Ji-won moving fast. He appeared in the doorway, and Sophia saw his face drain of color. It was brief, Sophia said calmly, keeping her focus on Hyunwoo. About 90 seconds. He's post-ictal now, but breathing well.
Ji-hun stood frozen, and Sophia realized this was what broke the other nannies, not the seizure itself, but watching a powerful man become powerless, watching a child suffer while his guardian could do nothing but witness. "Come here," Sophia said, not looking away from Hyun-woo. "What?" "Come here. Sit with us." Ji-hun moved slowly, carefully, like approaching something fragile. He sat on the opposite side of Hyun-woo's bed, his hands hovering uselessly. "Put your hand here," Sophia instructed, guiding his palm to Hyun-woo's chest. "Feel his heartbeat. It's steadying. He's coming back." Under Ji-hun's palm, Hyun-woo's heart gradually slowed from its panicked rhythm. The boy's eyes focused, found his uncle's face, and something passed between them. Recognition, love, apology. "You're safe," Ji-hun whispered, and his voice cracked. "I'm here." They sat like that for 20 minutes, 3 people in a room full of machines, and Sophia felt the fragile thing they were building: trust. When Hyun-woo finally slept, real sleep this time, exhaustion claiming him, Ji-hun stood slowly. "Thank you," he said to Sophia. She nodded. "This will happen again." "I know. And I'll be here." Ji-hun looked at her, and Sophia saw him truly considering it for the first time. Maybe she would stay. "Get some rest," Sophia said gently. "He's stable now." But Ji-hun didn't leave. He moved to the corner of the room, to a chair Sophia hadn't noticed, and sat down heavily. "I'll stay," he said. So they kept vigil together, the gangster and the nurse, while the child slept between them. The days developed a rhythm. Sophia learned Hyun-woo's language, the small finger movements that meant pain, the eye contact that meant fear, the slight smile that meant gratitude. She learned which songs calmed him, Yoruba lullabies her grandmother had sung, which foods he could tolerate, bland but spiced with just enough Korean flavor to feel like home, which stories made him forget the machines. She also learned Ji-hun's language.
He watched constantly. The cameras, she knew, but also in person. He would appear in doorways during medication times, during physical therapy, during the quiet moments when Sophia read to Hyun-woo. He never interrupted, but his presence was constant, evaluating. The day nurse, Min-so, warned her during a shift overlap. "He's never trusted anyone," Min-so said in rapid Korean, which Sophia understood better than she spoke. "The last nanny tried to steal medication to sell. The one before that called a tabloid. He's watching for betrayal." "Then he'll be disappointed," Sophia replied in careful Korean. "I'm not here to betray anyone." Min-so studied her. "Why are you really here? You could work anywhere." Sophia considered the question. "Because I couldn't save my brother. Maybe I can help someone else's." "That's not saving," Min-so said, not unkindly. "That's bearing witness." "Sometimes that's enough." The other nurses and staff who rotated through the penthouse treated Sophia with polite distance. She was foreign, temporary, probably doomed to fail like the others. She didn't push for friendship, didn't try to belong. Hyun-woo was her focus. But Ji-hun's lieutenants were harder to ignore. They came to the penthouse for meetings, men in expensive suits with violence in their eyes. They nodded respectfully to Sophia when they passed her in the hallway, but she caught their conversations in Korean and understood enough to know Ji-hun's business was expanding, becoming more dangerous. One night, a man named Kang stayed late. Sophia heard raised voices in Ji-hun's office, heard something break. When Kang left, his face was bruised, and Ji-hun stood in his office doorway, knuckles bleeding. Sophia didn't comment. She brought him a first aid kit silently, set it on the table outside his office, and returned to Hyun-woo's room. The next morning, she found a note in her room. "Thank you." Small gestures, careful acknowledgments. They were learning each other. Ji-hun watched her with clinical precision at first, looking for the inevitable betrayal. Everyone wanted something. Everyone had an angle. But Sophia Johnson seemed to want only what she'd said, to care for a dying child. He watched her through the cameras at 2 a.m. when she thought no one was observing, when she sat beside Hyunwoo's bed and cried silently into her hands. Watched her wipe her tears, compose herself, and return to reading to the boy with no trace of her grief visible. She was good at hiding pain. He recognized the skill. He watched her refuse the chef's elaborate meals and eat simple rice and vegetables. Watched her send money home every week, almost all her pay, and keep nothing for herself. Watched her pray in the morning and again at night, words he didn't understand but respected. She was devout, principled, stubborn. She reminded him of his sister. The thought came late one night when Safia was singing to Hyunwoo, a lullaby in Yoruba that made the boy's breathing ease. Ji-hoon's sister had sung to Hyunwoo like that, in Korean lullabies passed down from their grandmother. She'd sung even when doctors said the boy couldn't hear, couldn't understand, wouldn't remember. She'd sung because she believed love was worth expressing, even when it couldn't be returned. Safia sang the same way. Ji-hoon found himself spending more time in Hyunwoo's room, not just watching from cameras. He would sit in the corner while Safia worked, while she adjusted IV lines and monitored vitals, and spoke to the boy in that steady, gentle voice. "You're making him comfortable," Ji-hoon said one night. Safia looked up from her chart. "That's my job." "It's more than that." Ji-hoon gestured to the wooden giraffe on Hyunwoo's pillow, to the photos Safia had helped the boy arrange on his bedside table, his parents, his uncle, moments of a life cut too short. "You're making him feel human. He is human." The others treated him like a patient, like a problem. "I'm treating him like Hyunwoo," Safia said simply. "That's the difference." Ji-hoon studied her in the low light. She'd lost weight in the 3 weeks she'd been here, the stress of night shifts and emotional labor. Her eyes carried new exhaustion, but she showed up every evening with the same steady presence. "You need rest," he said. "I rest enough. You barely sleep. Neither do you." The observation hung between them. Ji-hoon did sleep, but poorly, plagued by dreams of car bombs and children screaming and blood on his hands that never washed clean. "Why do you watch me?" Safia asked suddenly. "On the cameras, I mean. I know you do." Ji-hoon considered lying, deflecting, decided on truth. "I'm looking for the moment you'll break." And? "I haven't yet. I won't. Everyone breaks." "Then maybe you're watching the wrong thing," Safia said. "Maybe instead of waiting for me to fail, you should be helping me succeed." "How?" "Talk to him," Safia's voice softened. "He knows you're there, in the hallway, in the shadows. He knows you care. But children need to hear it, even dying children, especially dying children." The suggestion felt like sandpaper across Ji-hoon's chest. He'd built his reputation on control, on emotional distance, on never showing weakness. But Hyunwoo wasn't a weakness. Hyunwoo was the only honest thing left in his life. "What do I say?" Ji-hoon asked quietly. "Whatever you wish someone had said to you." The words landed hard. Ji-hoon had grown up in this world, organized crime, family obligation, violence as currency. No one had told him he was loved. No one had said he was more than a tool, a weapon, a means to an end. He looked at Hyunwoo sleeping fitfully and wondered what he could offer this child besides money and medicine and guilt. The thought came late one night when Safia was singing to Hyunwoo, a lullaby in Yoruba that made the boy's breathing ease. Ji-hoon's sister had sung to Hyunwoo like that, in Korean lullabies passed down from their grandmother. She'd sung even when doctors said the boy couldn't hear, couldn't understand, wouldn't remember. She'd sung because she believed love was worth expressing, even when it couldn't be returned. Safia sang the same way. Ji-hoon found himself spending more time in Hyunwoo's room, not just watching from cameras. He would sit in the corner while Safia worked, while she adjusted IV lines and monitored vitals, and spoke to the boy in that steady, gentle voice. "You're making him comfortable," Ji-hoon said one night. Safia looked up from her chart. "That's my job." "It's more than that." Ji-hoon gestured to the wooden giraffe on Hyun-woo's pillow, to the photos Safia had helped the boy arrange on his bedside table, his parents, his uncle, moments of a life cut too short. "You're making him feel human. He is human." The others treated him like a patient, like a problem. "I'm treating him like Hyun-woo," Safia said simply. "That's the difference." Ji-hoon studied her in the low light. She'd lost weight in the 3 weeks she'd been here, the stress of night shifts and emotional labor. Her eyes carried new exhaustion, but she showed up every evening with the same steady presence. "You need rest," he said. "I rest enough. You barely sleep. Neither do you." The observation hung between them. Ji-hoon did sleep, but poorly, plagued by dreams of car bombs and children screaming and blood on his hands that never washed clean. "Why do you watch me?" Safia asked suddenly. "On the cameras, I mean. I know you do." Ji-hoon considered lying, deflecting, decided on truth. "I'm looking for the moment you'll break." And? "I haven't yet. I won't. Everyone breaks." "Then maybe you're watching the wrong thing," Safia said. "Maybe instead of waiting for me to fail, you should be helping me succeed." "How?" "Talk to him," Safia's voice softened. "He knows you're there, in the hallway, in the shadows. He knows you care. But children need to hear it, even dying children, especially dying children." The suggestion felt like sandpaper across Ji-hoon's chest. He'd built his reputation on control, on emotional distance, on never showing weakness. But Hyun-woo wasn't a weakness. Hyun-woo was the only honest thing left in his life. "What do I say?" Ji-hoon asked quietly. "Whatever you wish someone had said to you." The words landed hard. Ji-hoon had grown up in this world, organized crime, family obligation, violence as currency. No one had told him he was loved. No one had said he was more than a tool, a weapon, a means to an end. He looked at Hyun-woo sleeping fitfully and wondered what he could offer this child besides money and medicine and guilt.
Or it's contamination, Safia said quietly. Min Seo's eyes widened. You think someone poisoned him? I think someone might have introduced something into his food or medication. They tested everything. The feeding solutions, the water supply, the medication vials. It took 48 hours, but they found it. A bacterial contaminant in one of the prepared food samples. Choi's food. Ji-hoon's response was swift and quiet. Choi disappeared from the penthouse without fanfare, and Safia never asked what happened. She didn't want to know. She just focused on Hyun-woo, on nursing him through the infection, on proving that her suspicion had saved the child's life. When Hyun-woo finally stabilized, Ji-hoon came to her room. Not to Hyun-woo's room, but hers. He knocked, waited for permission, and entered when she opened the door. You were right, he said without preamble. I wish I hadn't been. Choi was working for a rival. They wanted leverage against me. Hurting Hyun-woo was their strategy. Safia felt sick. He's a child. They don't care. Ji-hoon's voice was hollow. In this world, everything is a weapon. I'm sorry. Don't be. You saved him. Ji-hoon looked at her with something she hadn't seen before, gratitude mixed with something deeper. You protected him when I couldn't. That's my job. It's more than that. Ji-hoon stepped closer, and Safia felt the intensity of his focus. You're not just doing a job. You care about him, actually care. Of course I do. Why? The question was genuine, confused, like Ji-hoon couldn't understand why someone would care without an ulterior motive. Safia thought of her brother, of all the nurses who'd treated David like a case file instead of a person. She thought of Hyun-woo's eyes when she sang to him, the way he relaxed when she held his hand. Because he deserves to be cared about.
she said simply. And because I promised myself I'd never let another child suffer alone if I could help it. Ji-hoon was quiet for a long moment. Then, thank you. You don't have to thank me. I do. Because you didn't run. When things got dangerous, when someone literally tried to hurt him, you stayed, you fought for him. I'll always fight for him. I believe you. And the way Ji-hoon said it, raw, vulnerable, made Safia's breath catch. She saw him clearly then, not the Mafia boss, not the dangerous man with blood on his hands, but someone who'd loved and lost and was terrified of losing again. Get some sleep, she said softly. I'll watch over him tonight. You watch over him every night. Then tonight won't be any different. Ji-hoon nodded and left, but Safia stood in her doorway and watched him walk down the hall. His shoulders were slightly less tense, his stride a little less burdened. She was changing something here, not just in Hyun-woo's life, but in Ji-hoon's, and the realization terrified her. 2 weeks after Choi's betrayal, the penthouse lost power at 1:32 a.m. Safia woke to darkness and the sudden piercing wail of Hyun-woo's oxygen concentrator alarm, backup battery depleted. She moved on muscle memory, grabbing the manual ventilation bag she kept bedside for exactly this scenario. But when she entered Hyun-woo's room, her blood ran cold. The boy wasn't breathing. Safia worked fast, positioned his airway, began bag valve ventilation, counted compressions. She didn't call for help. Every second mattered. 30 compressions, 2 breaths. 30 compressions, 2 breaths. Hyun-woo's chest rose with her efforts, but his heart rhythm was erratic, weak. Then Ji-hoon was there, phone flashlight illuminating the room. What happened? Power outage. His concentrator failed. I need you to take over ventilation while I check his pulse. Ji-hoon didn't hesitate. He took the bag, and Safia felt for Hyun-woo's femoral artery. Pulse is weak but present. Keep ventilating. Steady rhythm. They worked in tandem, and Safia heard chaos beyond the room. Shouting, running footsteps, the crackle of radios. This wasn't a normal power outage. It's an attack, Ji-hoon said, reading her thoughts. Coordinated. They cut the building's power and backups. They're trying to kill him. They're trying to kill me through him. Safia's hands didn't shake as she prepared emergency medications. Then they picked the wrong night. Ji-hoon's expression shifted. Surprise, admiration, something else. I need to secure the building. You need to ventilate your nephew. Ji-hoon, I can't do this alone, and I won't risk his life because you have a war to fight. He's fighting too, right here, right now. The words hit like bullets. Ji-hoon stared at her, then at Hyun-woo, then back. Tell me what to do, he said. For the next hour, they fought for Hyun-woo's life. Safia administered medications, monitored vitals with battery-powered equipment, and guided Ji-hoon through ventilation techniques. Outside, she heard gunfire, brief, controlled bursts, Ji-hoon's security handling the threat. But inside Hyun-woo's room, the only sounds were breathing and beeping and Safia's steady instructions. His color's improving. His saturation is rising. Will he make it? If we keep doing this, yes. How long? As long as it takes. 40 minutes later, the generators kicked in. Emergency power flooded the penthouse, and Hyun-woo's medical equipment roared back to life. Safia quickly reconnected his oxygen, adjusted his monitors, and watched his vitals stabilize. Only then did she let herself breathe. Ji-hoon collapsed into a chair, his expensive suit disheveled, his hair falling into his eyes. He looked younger, human, breakable. Thank you, he whispered. Safia checked Hyun-woo one more time, then sat down across from Ji-hoon. Is it over outside? For now. My men neutralized the threat. Neutralized. Don't ask. I'm not. Safia looked at her hands, steady despite everything. I just need to know if more is coming. Probably. This was a message, an escalation. Then we need to prepare better. Bigger battery backups, redundant systems. I need medical supplies that don't depend on refrigeration. Ji-hoon looked at her, this woman who just saved his nephew's life and was already planning.
For the next attack. You're not leaving. It wasn't a question, but Safia answered anyway. No. Even knowing it will happen again? Especially knowing that. Why? Sophia looked at Hyun Woo sleeping peacefully now, unaware how close he'd come to death. Because running is easy, staying is what matters. Ji-hoon stood slowly, walked to where Sophia sat, and did something she'd never seen him do. He touched her, gently, carefully, his hand on her shoulder. "I won't let them hurt you," he said. "I don't need your protection. You have it anyway." Their eyes met, and Sophia felt something shift between them, from employer and employee to something more complicated. Two people who'd fought side by side, two people who'd saved something precious together. "Get some rest," Ji-hoon said. "I'll watch him for a while." Sophia wanted to protest, to insist she could keep working, but exhaustion hit her suddenly, completely. She nodded and stood, but as she passed Ji-hoon, she paused. "You did good tonight," she said quietly. "He's alive because you stayed." Ji-hoon didn't respond, but his expression softened, and Sophia saw the ghost of the man he might have been in another life, someone who saved instead of destroyed, who protected instead of controlled. She left him there, sitting beside Hyun Woo, and wondered if she was falling for a monster or discovering he'd never been one at all. After the attack, everything changed. Ji-hoon increased security to the point where Sophia felt like she lived in a fortress. Guards rotated every 6 hours, cameras multiplied, emergency protocols were drilled until everyone could execute them unconsciously. But the real change was smaller, more intimate. Ji-hoon stopped hiding. He spent evenings in Hyun Woo's room now, not watching from corners, but participating. He helped with physical therapy, read Korean stories in a voice that shook with emotion, and held the boy when pain made sleep impossible. Sophia watched him transform from feared mafia boss to grieving uncle, and the dichotomy was stark. "You're good with him," she said one night. Ji-hoon looked up from where he was adjusting Hyun Woo's pillows. "I'm learning." "From who?" "You." The admission was quiet, vulnerable. Sophia felt something warm bloom in her chest, dangerous, inconvenient, undeniable. "I'm just doing what my mother did, what caregivers have done forever." "You make it look easy." "It's not. I cry in my room some nights." Ji-hoon's expression shifted. "I know. The cameras. I removed them from your room 3 weeks ago." Sophia blinked, surprised. "Then how?" "I hear you. The walls aren't soundproof." The knowledge that he'd listened to her grief, her prayers, her moments of breaking, it should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt like being seen. "Why did you remove the cameras?" asked Sophia. "Because you'd earned privacy." Ji-hoon's voice was low, careful. "Because I trusted you." "When did you start trusting me?" "The night you stood up to me, when you said Hyun Woo mattered more than my fear."
Sophia remembered that conversation, her boldness, his anger, the tension between them. "You could have fired me." "I almost did, but then I watched you with him, and I realized you were the first person who saw Hyun Woo as a child instead of a problem." "He is a child. In this world, even children are weapons, assets, leverage." Ji-hoon's jaw tightened. "But you treat him like he's precious." "He is precious." "To you, maybe. To everyone else, he's my weakness." Sophia stood, moved closer to where Ji-hoon sat. "Then everyone else is wrong. He's not your weakness. He's your humanity." Ji-hoon looked up at her, and Sophia saw the full weight of what he carried, the violence, the control, the empire built on fear. And beneath it all, a man desperate to save one small boy. "I don't know how to be human anymore," he said quietly. "You're learning, just like you're learning to care for him." "What if I fail?" "Then we fail together." The "we" hung between them, a promise, a partnership. something neither had meant to build but couldn't deny. Hyun-woo stirred in his bed, and they both turned to him immediately. The boy's eyes opened, found them both, and something like peace crossed his face. He had two people now, not just caregivers, but protectors. Family. Sophia felt Ji-hoon's hand brush against hers. Accidental or intentional, she couldn't tell, but she didn't pull away. They stood there, side by side, watching over a child who was teaching them both how to feel again. Hyun-woo spoke for the first time in 3 months on a Tuesday evening. Sophia was singing a Yoruba prayer song her grandmother had taught her when she heard it, small, hoarse, barely a whisper. Pretty. She stopped mid-verse, heart pounding. Hyun-woo? The boy's eyes were bright, more alert than she'd seen them in weeks. Pretty song. Sophia's vision blurred with tears. She pressed the call button for Ji-hoon, then knelt beside the bed. Thank you, she whispered. Do you want me to keep singing? Hyun-woo nodded slightly. When Ji-hoon arrived, running from wherever he'd been, Sophia gestured for silence. Then she sang again, and Hyun-woo's lips moved, trying to form the foreign words. Ji-hoon stood frozen in the doorway, watching his nephew attempt language for the first time in months, and Sophia saw him cry. Not quiet tears, but real, body-shaking grief and joy mixed together. After the song ended, after Hyun-woo drifted into peaceful sleep, Ji-hoon pulled Sophia into the hallway. How did you do that? I didn't do anything. He did. The doctor said he wouldn't speak again, that the neurological damage... Doctors aren't always right. Sometimes connection matters more than diagnosis. Ji-hoon stared at her. You gave him back his voice. I gave him music. He found his voice himself. Ji-hoon's hand reached up, touched Sophia's cheek, and she realized she was crying too. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for seeing him, for believing in him.
I believe in both of you. The words were reckless, honest, dangerous. Ji-hoon's eyes searched hers, and Sophia felt the shift from gratitude to something electric, something neither of them could afford. Sophia, don't, she said quickly. Don't say it, not yet. Why? Because I work for you, because Hyun-woo needs me, because this, she gestured between them, is complicated. Everything in my life is complicated. This is different. How? Because if I let myself care about you, I can't leave, ever, and I don't know if you're ready for that. Ji-hoon's hand dropped from her face, but his eyes held hers. What if I am ready? Then prove it, not with words, with time. She walked away then, back to Hyun-woo's room and didn't look back, but she felt Ji-hoon's gaze following her, and her heart raced with possibility and fear in equal measure. Ji-hoon proved it with small things. He learned to cook simple meals Hyun-woo could eat. He researched Yoruba culture and surprised Sophia with traditional ingredients she'd mentioned missing. He hired more overnight medical staff so Sophia could sleep more than 4 hours a night. He also moved his bedroom closer to Hyun-woo's. Why? Sophia asked when she noticed the change. So I can hear if you need me. I have the call button. I know, but I want to be closer. The unspoken truth, he wanted to be closer to both of them. Sophia felt herself falling, slow, inevitable, terrifying. She fought it at first, reminded herself of the boundaries, the complications, but Ji-hoon was patient, steady, proving through action that he was more than his reputation. One night, 3 months after she'd arrived, Sophia found him in the surveillance room, the one place she'd never entered. Can I come in? Ji-hoon looked surprised, but nodded. The room was exactly as she'd imagined, screens everywhere, showing every angle of the penthouse. I need to ask you something. Anything. Why did you really hire me? Ji-hoon leaned back in his chair. You know why. You were qualified. 15 other people were qualified. Why me specifically? He was quiet for a long moment. Because when I watched you with Hyun-woo that first night, I saw you give him something I couldn't. Hope.
Not false hope, not pity. Real hope that his life, however short, could still have meaning. And now? Now I've realized you gave that to me, too. Sophia's breath caught. Ji-hoon, I love you. The words were simple, definitive. I've known for weeks, maybe months, and I know it's complicated, that it breaks every professional boundary, but I'm not sorry for it. You can't love me. You barely know me.
I've watched you save Hyunwoo's life 6 times. I've heard you pray for us both. I've seen you sacrifice your own health, your own peace, for a child who isn't yours and a man who's done terrible things. Ji-hoon stood, moved closer. I know you, Sophia, better than you think. What you know is the person I am here, in this apartment, with Hyunwoo. That's who you are everywhere. Compassionate, strong, unwilling to abandon people who need you. I'm none of those things naturally. I'm scared all the time. I doubt myself constantly. Then you're brave for staying despite the fear. Sophia felt tears building. If I say yes to this, to you, everything changes. It already has. Hyunwoo comes first, always. I know. And I won't pretend I don't see your world, the violence, the control. I won't be complicit. I wouldn't ask you to be. Then what are you asking? Ji-hoon took her hands gently. Stay, not as an employee, as family, as mine. The word mine should have felt possessive. Instead, it felt like belonging. I'm still scared, Sophia whispered. So am I. Of what? Losing you, losing him, losing the only good things I have left. Sophia looked into Ji-hoon's eyes and saw the truth. This dangerous man was completely vulnerable to her. She could destroy him with a word, with leaving, with betrayal. But she wouldn't. Okay, she said quietly. Okay? I'll stay. I'll be yours, but you have to be mine too, completely. No secrets about Hyunwoo's care, no hiding when things get dangerous. Deal. Ji-hoon kissed her then, gentle, reverent, like she was something precious that might break, and Sophia kissed him back, tasting salt from tears she didn't remember shedding. When they finally pulled apart, Ji-hoon rested his forehead against hers. Thank you, he whispered. For what? For saving us both. 6 months later, Hyunwoo celebrated his 7th birthday. He wouldn't live to see 8, the doctors had been clear about that, but he was alive, comfortable, and surrounded by people who loved him. Sophia had officially moved into the penthouse, not as staff, but as family. She still provided Hyunwoo's primary care, but now with a full medical team she'd helped assemble. The boy had good days and bad days, but more good than bad, and he smiled often. Ji-hoon had changed too. He'd stepped back from the most violent aspects of his business, delegating to trusted lieutenants. He'd never be clean, never be safe, but he'd become present, a real guardian, a real partner. And Sophia had found something she didn't know she needed, a family built from broken pieces, held together by choice and love. On Hyunwoo's birthday, they gathered in the penthouse's living room, no longer sterile, but filled with photos, art, life. The boy sat propped on cushions, wearing a party hat Sophia had made, surrounded by presents he probably wouldn't have strength to open. But he was happy. That was enough.
Make a wish, Sophia said, holding the cake close so Hyunwoo could see the candles. The boy closed his eyes, lips moving in silent prayer. Then he looked at Ji-hoon, at Sophia, and smiled. Already came true, he whispered. Sophia's tears came immediately. Ji-hoon's arm wrapped around her shoulders, pulling her close. He's right, Ji-hoon murmured against her hair. It did. They blew out the candles together, 3 people who'd found each other in darkness and built something beautiful from it. That night, after Hyunwoo slept, Sophia found Ji-hoon on the balcony, looking out at Seoul's lights. What are you thinking about? She asked, wrapping her arms around him from behind. How I spent years building an empire and felt nothing. Then you walked in and taught me what actually matters. What matters? This. You. Him. Family. Sophia rested her cheek against his back. I love you. I love you too. They stood there in the night, two people who'd survived their own kind of warfare and felt something neither had expected. Peace. Inside, Hyunwoo slept peacefully, his breathing steady with machine assistance, but his dreams free. He dreamed of giraffes and songs and the woman who sang to him in languages that sounded like love. And in his dreams, he wasn't dying. He was just a boy, surrounded by family, exactly as he should be. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share where you're watching from. Stories like this only exist because of you.